Hello, and welcome to another episode of For the Love of Sports. My name is Michael Rasile. This is the show where we get to talk about sports, we get to talk about business, we get to talk about everything in between, wherever you are, however you're listening. You know what to do. 5-star review, leave a review on Apple, like and subscribe on YouTube, all the easy ones. Most importantly today, I have Chris Adams. He's the founder and CEO of SharpRank. Chris, how you doing today, man?
I'm doing great. Trying to escape the heat a little bit, but otherwise doing really well.
Hey, man, take it. Remember when it was super cold and snowing only a couple months ago?
Yep.
Yeah, so
Everyone
let's
forgets that. Yep.
exactly, yes. Let's never forget about that piece of it. That's the most important part. We're in. I would much rather sweat than be cold. So
Yeah.
let's just always remember that. But Chris, enough about the weather. We could talk about the weather all day. That's too easy, man. Small talk. Who needs it? More importantly, man, I want to talk about you, your background, what you're doing, Sharp Rank, how you guys got into this. But Chris, the first question I have for everybody on the For the Love of Sports podcast is, why do you love sports so much?
It's it's so natural. It's one of those just natural loves that came to me so early as a kid. I think what drew me to it initially is the competitive nature of it. I loved and still love. I am my my wife will be the first one to tell you, like, I am no fun to play games with. Like, just
Awesome.
I'm no fun because uh, I play to win. Like, I play to win. It could be Uno. It could be pick. Like, I don't enjoy, just getting out there and playing. And like the beauty of that is that, like, sports offer that opportunity every single time. I kind of, have always lived by um, practice like you've never won and play like you've never lost
I like that.
mentality. And so I took to sports really early and rampantly. Like, just like every single, people always ask, like, what sports did you play growing up? And it's easier to define what I didn't play than what I did play. I really took to soccer at a young age. I was able to, like, um, play overseas for a summer. So I played that pretty competitively. But from a fan perspective, uh, I grew up in Baltimore, and so, given my age, the only sport here growing up was Orioles baseball. That was it. 3 years before I was born, Mayflower trucks took the Colts away, and then so I grew up just loving baseball, and because it was the only thing there. And then when I'm 10 years old, these superheroes show up that are, like, they don't even have a team name, but they're our football team. And that to me was like, I mean, as a 10-year-old, there was nothing cooler in the world than that. And then to watch that that Ravens defense the first couple years, I mean, I'm still somebody who likes watching, like, 6-3 football games and just, like, knockdown drag out football. So, like, that really, to me, was the biggest part of it, was just the competitive nature of it. I was surrounded by it. I actually, in my hospital, not my hospital bed, my mom's hospital bed, my dad surrounded me. My first picture is being surrounded by sports apparel, so hockey skates, baseball bats, and just, like, completely surrounded. It's like we have a huge picture of it in my house. So it was written in the stars for me, man. There was no doubt where I was going to go in life.
That sounds awesome, man. Yes, as you said, from birth, pretty much that was ingrained into you. I think that's awesome. And yeah, I mean, Orioles baseball used to be really, really good. I mean, recently it's been a little disappointing. And me being a Mets fan, now we have Buck Showalter, so it's actually been a little bit of fun. So hopefully you can at least root for the Mets in some capacity. But yeah, man, it's always interesting, kind of hearing why people love these things that we love so much. And competition is always, one of the ones that come to the forefront. And it's, business, breeds excellence, breeds competition, right? That's what we're trying to do. And now we're talking about, you have a background in finance, and now you're working in the sports betting space, and I mean, those are two extremely competitive spaces, right? Like you didn't go for anything easy. It's like finance. Okay, yeah, sure, man. If you want to work 1,000 hours and beat everybody else, you're more than welcome, right? So, what was that like? I guess like getting like what was finance always a love of yours, or was it just that the fact that it was the pretty much most competitive that you can get in terms of working working a lifestyle as you can get?
So actually, so I did my undergrad senior thesis on game theory tendencies in the NFL draft, and
That's awesome. Can I read that? Could you like send that to me?
no,
I'll
I'm
put it in the show
so
notes.
embarrassed. I'm so
What?
embarrassed by it.
That
It
sounds
was
awesome.
it
I'm a
was
big draft
so
guy, so like that sounds fantastic.
it was like I had to run it up the ladder really high at that unit at my undergrad to be like, no, this is a legit topic.
Yeah.
Like, but anyway, so after that, I merged, and I always liked finance. Like I always liked, um, I always enjoyed finance to some degree. So I kind of merged those two into my first job out of undergrad, where I was doing banking for professional and semi-professional sports franchises. So we were advisory investment bankers to buying and selling sports franchises. So that was AA teams, English Premier League teams, NBA teams. We tried to start a horse racing league where every city would have a stable, and had the financial means for it, but city governments don't play ball with each other. But I was really excited about that. And so I got to experience that for the first 2 years out of school, and really, like, that to me just ignited something in me that I loved. I was combining two things that I love and learning so much. You know, your first job out of undergrad is always so important, I think, and like a lot of it is who you choose to get molded by. And the guys I was working for there were the most efficient people I've ever worked around. Outside of SharpRank, we're very efficient.
I'm sure the
Very
most efficient.
yeah. But I loved that. I loved the fact that I could sit in a meeting with very important people on both sides of the table, like by my standards, very important people, and the guy I would work with would get 2 minutes into the meeting, not even, and go, "This is not a good use of my time," and then leave. And I would just be sitting there as like
I
this
love that.
24-year-old kid, like, okay, well, I'll just finish up here with these idols of mine. And so from that moment on, I always like, I kind of just trended towards those types of environments, like high performing, high pressure. I think it's just something innate in my DNA that I thrive in chaotic situations. I'm like, when things are calm, I'm uncomfortable. I like my mind calms down the crazier the outside world gets. So finance presented a great opportunity for that.
I would say that is definitely the industry if you want some crazy shit to go on.
Yeah.
That's finance is a place for it, and especially with what you were doing. I mean, working with and trying to, M&As and acquisitions specifically of teams, leagues. I mean, we're talking billions of dollars, right? Like, so how many years ago was it? What were some? Are you allowed to talk about someone like the EPL teams? Because I know a lot of them have been sold to American business owners. Obviously, we just saw Chelsea sold for like 5 point whatever billion to Dodgers owner partially, but turns out most of these are just venture capital firms now, which is kind of boring, a little. I don't know, but like, what were some of the teams and that you guys had the opportunity to work with?
From an EPL standpoint, like, I'll let people do their own
Yes,
home.
that's
I
perfect.
don't want
You
to.
don't say it, but we can look up the date. Awesome. That's
Yeah,
great.
so I'm from Baltimore. I worked in Baltimore doing that type of work. You can figure that out
all right.
very quickly.
Very cool.
Um,
Awesome. Sounds
yeah,
good.
yeah.
I like the sound of that. But that's just got to be so much fun again for 24. I mean, what level of responsibility did you have Like, so
Oh,
new 24.
none.
No, okay,
No,
cool. I was gonna
yeah,
say, like, how much
no,
were
no,
did they even allow you to do? Was it more just,
no.
hey, we need you to do some stuff, or like, did you get to talk in those meetings too?
No, it was like for me, I thought I had the weight of the world, like
Oh,
on my task.
absolutely.
Looking back at it now, and like having left to go into like other types of investment banking, and like thinking about what I task an analyst with, there was I mean, these guys were experts and they knew it, and like and they were very very efficient, and like I just tried as best I could to help in any way I
Hmm.
could, and like that could be as simple as like, you know, running books down to get bound, but like it could also be taking a crack at a financial model, because like the the modeling for a sports franchise is very different than like a manufacturing or a tech company, etc., where um, you know, expenses are kind of an owner's discretion type of thing, and so you can't really price off of EBITDA or those types of multiples like in other industries, because if I buy the team, I can gut every
Hmm.
expense that I want to, and like, and then I'm like this highly profitable. So you can't really do that. You're comparing apples to oranges. So you look at like revenue multiples because of collective bargaining agreements and things like that, and market comps, which is like, very minimal. But we're entering a time period now, and you're starting to see it, um, where team owners they're old. Like there is going to be a lot of turnover, and then you start to think, who could really buy those teams? Like seriously, who
Yeah.
like there's like three people on the planet who can afford to buy those things. So you have to look at alternate means of capital, and like that's where venture comes in, or private equity, or some sort of institutional group who has the means to be able to do that. Because otherwise, like I think we're potentially at the cusp of losing those personality
Hmm.
owners to group dynamic, because the valuations have just gone so high.
Yeah, I mean, as you're saying, like, you really anybody that has a name Walmart, right? Whoever owns some of those Walmart stocks,
Yep.
Jeff Bezos' wife. Like, we're really, as you said, we're talking about a very small group of people that can actually say, here's 3.5 or here's $5 billion, right? Like,
Yep.
and there's the valuation of it, and then there's how much it's actually going to cost, and then all the owners have to accept it. So it is really interesting, and yeah, I mean, positives and negatives to that. If I never get to see Jerry Jones's face again, I think I'd be totally okay with that, right? I think most people would. But also that means I know that the Cowboys actually have a shot of winning if he's gone. Dan Snyder, same thing. I know that like the Commanders have a shot of winning. So like, yeah, he's a terrible human being, and I don't want him to be an NFL owner to make the money. But as a Giants fan, like I'm totally okay with it because I have no confidence in the world the Washington whoever's are going to do anything. So it's always there's that interesting dynamic, and it's fun to watch. But you're totally right. Like a lot of these owners are old. A lot of them are seeing like I can take the money and run, man. Like why not?
Yeah.
You bought something for $100 million 30 years ago, and now it's worth $4 billion.
Yeah.
I think you made your money. You can still root for the team. Nothing really is gonna happen. I think it's worth it. So it is. It is always interesting to see all those. And I guess so. Where does the transition from valuating sports franchises go into the sports bet? Like where does that transition even happen? How do you get there?
Yeah. So from that first job, I went to a Big Four auditing group, or public accounting firm, for about 3 years, and kind of, you know, again chose the best work life balance environment I could possibly find, and then from there I went back to investment banking, but for tech, data, and cyber companies, and shortly after, not shortly, but after that, I went to get my MBA at Virginia, and in between that time of ending with where I was
Hmm.
doing banking and starting, I heard, I was driving back from the beach with my partner, and we heard a radio ad. And if you listen to sports radio, you know this guy, right? Like, who's like making claims that are statistically impossible
Love it.
and then guaranteeing people money if they call and buy the pick. And I'm now like 8 years into investment banking with like fingerprints, FINRA exams, background checks, compliance, and still can't guarantee money. And this like light bulb went off in my head, like, oh my God, that regulation can't come from a federal level because it's repealed, and states aren't going to do it because it'll inhibit tax revenue, trickle through tax revenue. So like, where does this Morningstar or Moody's or Carfax or Better Business Bureau, like where is that in this market? Because like you cannot have the public consuming that. Like, if you want this industry to expand and grow, that cannot exist. And I'm sure you saw last week that story broke about that former pro poker player who was claiming to have like inside info on team doctors and guaranteeing bets, and then walked away with $25 million in a scam. And like that is what we are here to prevent. So like that light bulb just kind of went off, and we went digging and tried to find somebody doing that. And there was no one. There was no one wearing the sheriff hat or the sheriff badge in the Wild West. And so we just built it. Like, we just built some really smart tech and data science, and that's the role we play and serve the market. And that's really where that transition took place, is right there in that car. And then once we got home, we basically opened the back of the car, took out folding chairs, and sat out in a driveway and just started like going, like just moving.
That's awesome.
And then from there we just foot on the gas, like just kept moving.
So how does something like that, like, everybody's got a great idea, right? I talk to so many entrepreneurs like yourself on this show, and it's like the idea, everybody has $1 million idea. That's the easiest thing in the world to come up with, right? Like, come on.
Yeah.
How do you actually execute upon that, though, right? Like, at least you're coming from an industry, as you said, you have the Moody's of the world, you have the AM Bests of the world, right? You're rating these things, and you're making sure they're okay. They're actually saying what they're saying. But like, how do you actually, like, where do you start with that, and how do you actually implement that into practice, considering that guy on the radio is not going to be like, yeah, let me get on to SharpRank so that they can know that when I say I'm guaranteeing something, it doesn't happen. Like, how do you kind of work all angles of that to make sure that, especially in the beginning, that something like this can survive?
Yeah, it's so one of the things I always think about is I got a really good piece of advice from my dad, actually, like right when I came to him in a fever pitch, and like I guess both my parents and my wife, and like I had done that before, and about something else. It was still related to sports, but something else, and their message didn't change. It was like, okay, do it. And I was like, well, yeah, it's kind of this, that, and the other thing. And like, for whatever reason, this time when I came to them and they're like, yeah, you should really do that. That's a great idea. I was like, oh yeah, it really is just that. It's like, okay, what's the very first thing I have to do and we have to do? It's like, well, we need to have a company. So like, we need to form a company. And like, you just start to like, you can imagine these lofty goals and things like that, but like, what it really comes down to is what is immediately in front of me that I can be doing that drives at that end objective. And for us, that came in the two forms. One was understand, well, I guess three forms. One was understand what needed to go into an algorithm to rank these people. Accuracy is important, but doesn't really matter. How do we look at a fully three-dimensional DNA view of that person as a picker? So like multifaceted risk profiles, expense ratios, all these like very deep behavioral science components of this person that build them up to become a 5, a 4, or a 3-star. So understanding
These
that.
are just mutual funds then, right?
These are just mutual funds.
Okay, yeah. I
Yeah.
remember from my days in finance those 5-star. Yeah, okay, that's funny.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, exactly. And then so from there, it was like, okay, great. Second thing, who do we need to add to this team to be able to do it? I can't code. I'm pretty well oriented around numbers and statistics and things like that, but I can't code or anything. So we need one of those. We need to grab somebody who has a PhD in statistics to run this by. And then the last component is like, how do we get people to accept this into the market? And there's really two avenues to go, right? They're kind of, I guess you would say the one strengthens the other, but it's cyclical. So there's the commercial side of our business, which is licensing our ratings and our data science into media properties. The other side is the consumer adoption of our ratings. And so where do we spend our focus initially? And so that solving those three problems in and of itself were really like the biggest things for us. And from there, everything else just branched off of that. It's like, what is the core value of this company? It's like to provide transparency into a traditionally murky market, period. Like, that's it. And because we believe the market can't mature without it. It just can't, like, the total addressable market will shrink if somebody calls that guy and gets burned and scammed. They will never come back to sports betting. So we are trying to expand that total addressable market to more casual consumers, as well as that person who's like entrenched in sports betting.
I think it's very necessary, right? Just go to #gambling Twitter and see how many people lose bets every night, right? Like that's always one of my favorite things to do. It's like, yeah, we told you that we had, this on lock. It's like, yeah, but I don't see where you told us anywhere, guy. So like, I don't really know how you told me that, but it's always very interesting kind of how the picks business does work. And hey, there are some people out there that do well. There are a couple friends of mine that do run services, and they do pretty well. I tail their picks and I make money, right? That's the goal. But at the same time, that you're so right. There's so many people, right? We've heard the Stu Feiner, everyone knows, Barstool Sports Advisors. He was huge back in the day. They made a movie about him, if I'm not mistaken, with like Matthew McConaughey. There's like one for the money, I think. And essentially, like, what they used to do was they'd be like, we're gonna guarantee, call us up for the free pick, and then you can pay for the other 3. And all they would do is half the people that would call up would get Dallas -5, the other half would get Cardinals +5. Like, that's it. Every other person would get it, so half the people would be happy. They'd come back, they'd spend money, and then they'd continue to buy the picks, right? So it was a really shitty business, very shady, murky. I like the word you use. How do you get? So you said we have the three problems. Those first 2, way over my head. That is what it is. You guys are smart. You guys figured them out. I'm more curious in that cyclical aspect, that chicken or the egg part. Like, how do you have the commercial side and the retail side? What are you doing to fuel both of those? Which one did you decide to say, hey, we need to go after this first? Because, right, you need a little supply, you need a little demand, we need people to be happy right at the gate. So how did you guys view that problem and obviously become successful at it?
Yeah, it's the simplest way I've heard it described is like, how do you get the first guy on a dating app, right? Like, it when he shows up, it has to be fully functioning, otherwise he's leaving.
Yeah.
And so for us, that meant focusing on these media properties where the exposure to the public is the highest, and really from there we can trickle out and expand out elsewhere, but focusing on where the eyeballs of the public are going so that we're being as protective as we can up front. And getting, we had an early partnership, a really early partnership with Sports Illustrated. So we're the ratings agency for Sports Illustrated. We're the ratings agency for Gannett. We're the ratings agency for Parlay, Champion Gaming, like all these. Once we got that first one,
Mm-hmm.
everyone else, it's tough to get that first kid in the pool,
Yep.
right? And then once people see that kid in the pool, they jump. And it's one of those things where it's like, guys, look, we're not like a nice to have in this industry. We are necessary for you guys to continue on and growing your business. We are required to exist, us or our equivalent. And so because it does in every other industry. Like you look at a car commercial, I don't know what JD Power does. I just
No
know
idea.
next to every truck is 50 trophies, and like I'm like, wow, that's pretty good, right? And so like it's everywhere in every other industry, and like for us, that is kind of what we're telling folks is like, look, you can adopt this and help push this market forward and push the snake oil out, or you can let that wave crash on your head. And like, you don't want to be that group. Like I'm just telling you, history shows like you do not want to be the last one adopting something that is necessary in the market, because the public will come calling about that. And you know, we liken ourselves a lot to like Morningstar. You mentioned the mutual funds, and for us, that's really the approach we're taking. Is like, financial institutions are not going to pitch funds that don't have Morningstar ratings.
Mm-hmm.
We're following that same trend with like, hey, get your guys and girls, get them on SharpRank so that they can start using that to their advantage. We call it defend and weaponize. So we act as that first wall of defense when the public comes calling, and they can say, it's not me, this is a ratings agency, this is their opinion of them, not me. And then on the other side of it, they can use it to their advantage and use it against competitors and things like that. And so that's really where we focus. It drives our customer acquisition costs down when people see us in Sports Illustrated articles and on parlay videos and all these sorts of things. And then that expansion of the consumer side answers another question for the commercial side, which is one of the questions we get is how many new eyes is my team going to get? And so that's where it starts to cycle.
Yep.
Now, just to be clear, that sounds like a very well thought out strategy, and it is. We made plenty of mistakes trying to figure that out.
Absolutely.
So I would say this, like, if someone is listening and they're like on the edge of like, I have an idea, you are going to screw up. Like, just deal with it. And like, we view that as like creating. I don't know how old the audience is of this, but like creating the photo negative of the photo, right? Like you can't have the photo without that negative, and that's what all those screw ups are. It's like, okay, not that, not this, and that's really how we go about approaching things. Is just test, learn, test, learn, test, learn, and then something works, and so.
Yeah, I'm sure
Anyway.
through all that you found better ideas too, right? You probably had an idea and you screwed up a couple times. You're like, wait, what if we did it? You know, because of one of those failures, you came up with a better idea from that.
Oh, 100%. Like I'll give you. So two things is singularity of focus is important when it's on the core value of the business. If you're creating features and strategies that tie back to that core value of the business, fine. the second that that focus shifts to something tangential to what you do and like very easy to do for you but not tied to that core business, like that becomes a problem. And like I one of our early investors, very very smart guy, like most successful guy I've ever been around. And I had, we had this like come, like moment of clarity, right, in one of our meetings, and it wasn't our business. It was close, but it wasn't our business. And I like called him up all excited, like, I got this great idea, and I like ran it past him, and he's like, I invested in a good idea. Why would you do anything other than that? And hung up the phone. And, and I was like, okay, noted, noted.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, I mean, I think it's important, right, for anyone out there listening. I think most of them will understand that photo negative thing, but no, I totally agree. You're going to screw up. I mean, I had a business for a little while. It was a blast, and it was also like the worst thing ever, right? Like it's both sides of it. Some days were the greatest ever. Other days it was like, I don't think I'm going to eat tomorrow. So it's always fun how that works. Thankfully, you guys have come out. It seems like that emotional roller coaster has smoothed out a little bit for you guys, which is a good thing. And I'm kind of curious, right? Like how I want to get into the nitty gritty a little bit without confusing myself. Like you talked about these pickers and how you have behavioral analysis and all the statistics. I mean, one thing that's always like, well, how do I know they actually placed that bet, right? Like, it's easy. I can go on, some of these pick tracking apps. Like, oh, he put the pick in.
Yeah.
Okay, that's cool. Like, did he actually play that? So I'm curious. How do you guys make sure that you're going to the nth degree to those 5-star guys are really saying and doing everything and are making and playing the things that they're recommending?
Yeah, that's a good question. And like where our focus is currently, it's information flow more than it is anything else. So
Okay.
like if someone is on NFL Network giving out picks and predictions, that to us is enough to say
Okay.
this needs to be protected from the public. So we take it as anyone who is public facing or anything, like we rate and rank some predictive machines.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and like anything that's public facing kind of falls under our domain, and that's where like when people see SharpRank, they assume that it's filled with like just guys sitting in a sports book all day and stuff like that. And there are a few of those guys and girls on the platform. Primarily, when we think about what we drive at from the onset, that is protection of the public and the expert in public-facing spheres. So it's not, and that's like the question we get a lot is like, well, you're a pick tracker. It's like, nah, not really. We're a data science company, right? Like they log their picks with us, and we use that as the foundation on which we can build and create. And then from there, it's just about maintaining our independence. I mean, you've seen a lot of them out there who start as pick trackers and then start producing their own pick content. And it's like, okay, well, you're Ford rating pickup trucks, so you're no longer a competitor. And so that to us is the most important thing. It's the information that the public uses to place their own bets needs to be level set. Whether or not that person goes in and physically places the bet, it doesn't matter to us, because we're saying that's as good as placing a it's
You're putting that out there
information
to the
flowing.
public, saying you should do this. That's good enough for you guys to say, let's take a look at this. Let's just make sure that this person isn't. I'm sure those guys on ESPN are just terrible then, huh?
We're independent. I can't. You can look at the mobile app and see see for yourself.
I'm kind of speaking that one out into the world, saying, wow, those guys are absolutely terrible, and I'm sure they are. Is there anything below a 3-star?
Well, no, we cut it off there. There's amateur gold and silver, but like I think one thing that you just hit on is like really it like really drives at our core business, is that like we're seeing this unprecedented merging of content platforms and sportsbook operators. Like everyone has a dance partner, or they've bought one, or they're creating one. And if you look at a bank, the research side of the house, which would be the content arm, has to be completely bifurcated from the trading floor. Like, has to happen. It is required. And so that is where we can really drive some value for people to say, like, look, everything under this content arm, regardless of the fact that they have a sportsbook partner, operator, they're under the same umbrella of the parent company, everything checks out here. And like everything is okay and validated, and here's the DNA of this team, right? And doing that creates a more transparent and a more mature market, because people are able to actually trust that content, that they're not just getting like pushed to where the operator wants the public to go.
Yeah. I mean, I work for an operator, so that 100% makes sense. It's pretty necessary, as you said, because if it's, I mean, there's a couple places it gets interesting, right? Like you see, where these same game parlay boosts are now all sponsored by some content provider, and it's like, well, that's interesting. Like, I'm curious about that one. How does that work, right? And I kind of know how it works. So it's really interesting to see how all of that happens. I guess one thing I'm curious about. So you guys are, you're doing the upstanding work, and this is great, and you're doing it because you want to, and you're doing it because you're good people, but you also got to make money, right? Like, how do you guys make money in this whole situation? Because if you're just going out spending data research time and statistics and having a PhD just on call, like, how are you guys making money in all this stuff?
It's for the love of sports. You can't just bleed
that's
money.
Why we love it.
Yeah. No, so we monetize a couple ways on our consumer facing product. We have a freemium aspect to it, so there's a subscription aspect to it. There's affiliate links to it, and then there's some light native advertising that like you can't even notice.
Don't tell your advertisers that, by the way.
Yeah, cut that.
Yeah. I'm not going to. Don't tell your advertisers that.
So no, it's good, and we, for us it was important for the public to be able to download, play around in that consumer facing product without having to upfront pay something. Now, if you want the additional level of data, really similar to the Morningstar platform, like I can go on there right now. I'm not an investment advisor. I don't need to know like all those nits and about a fund. I just need to know like what's it rated, give me the expense ratio, all that sort of stuff. And so there's that public side, and then like getting deeper into it, if you want to look for some, like we have like over 40 proprietary metrics that like you can dig into and understand and educate and learn and understand. We call it the Princeton percentile, and it's basically game theory, right? Like it's opportunity gain and cost in different bet types, and like based on your betting behavior. And so there's a lot of like really, really interesting stuff in there, all the way down to like records on certain teams. And then, so that's the consumer facing side and the mobile app, and that really serves as the mesh point to our commercial partners, which is one of the things we heard from people early on, and this harkens back to something you said earlier, was like, the content platforms are like, we're not going to teach our team a new CMS system. Like we have enough trouble getting them to put out articles and videos on time. Like it just will not happen. And so we're like, all right, well, these are mostly younger people. All of them use apps. So let's just build like a really friendly, easy to use, intuitive app, and they can just have it in their pocket, and when they're at the bar they can input what they do. And then obviously, like, you know, we go through and run all that through pick validators and our 5 audit procedures with completeness, existence, accuracy, occurrence, all that sort of stuff. And then but from there, what we do is we sell seat licenses, just like Morningstar sells seat licenses for mutual funds. Same concept. It's a annual subscription for the content platform or the sportsbook operator, and it starts as simply as like, hey, we're going to initiate coverage on you. We've kept you in our watch list for the past 3 months. We do a character matrix on you based on skill, innovative approach, how you interact with the public, all these sorts of things to see if you can, quantity doesn't necessarily matter as much as the quality does for us. And so we license our ratings back to those media properties, but from there we can start to get a little more integrated with our partners and what we can provide for them. If you think about what we do as a data science company, there's a lot of things that operators and content platforms can leverage just based on the data that they have from us. So they might now be able to know that this cluster of readers is going to be highly interested in things tied to this attribute that comes from one of our rating or metrics, and they can create individualized funnels to those consumers through that type of stuff. Same with a sportsbook operator, right? Like, rather than, hey, everyone gets $1,000 free, it's let's target specifically who those people are who are interested in like a $50 free play on the Jets money line because they have high risk assumption and score really highly on the risk profiles. So all those sorts of things, that gets into like...
That is getting to the nitty gritty. But that is, I mean, that's super interesting. Again, me coming from that side of the business, like that's what we talk about on a daily basis. Like how do we get to those specific players? How do we get in front of these, types of people in different ways? And I think it's a really interesting concept that you guys came together with. And I think it's really important. Again, being in this industry for a couple years, I was at one of those content providers. I like to think we did everything above board, like we weren't, selling fake pics or anything like that. But it was really interesting just to kind of see what the rest of the industry was doing and how they were doing. And as you said, you got those sleazy guys that are just terrible for the industry. And I think it's important to have something like this, as you said, to really just like give a little bit of credence and clarity to really what's going on here. Now, everyone might not understand what 5 stars is, and they might not look deep into those 40 different metrics that you guys have. But the opportunity and the understanding is pretty clear. It's like, why do you guys only have 3 stars? 3 is not as good as 5. This is it, right. Like it comes down to that. Let's be honest. Who's actually going to read everything anyway? But I think that part's really interesting. And as you explained, the opportunity to make money in a couple different ways is very important, right? For you guys, we need you to make money so you could be around and continue to do what you do. Last thing I want to talk about a little bit. I know you have some deals, or you tell me exactly the word you want to use, but teams and leagues, and being, tied to them in some capacity. Where we haven't talked about teams or leagues at all. We've talked about the media side. We've talked about the sharps. We've talked about the consumers. What do you guys do for and with the teams and leagues? Considering now everybody has a sportsbook partner, right? Like everybody's taking the money. Take the free money, right? As you were saying. How are you guys helping them?
Yeah. So one of the things that and the other area that I would add into that is states, right? And specifically states that are having trouble passing this through. We present a really nice opportunity for them to say, we're going to do everything we can to protect our public, and in doing that, we are going to here is where there is valid information sources. Outside of that, it is play at your own risk, and communicating that to the residents of that state. And that is like a very, very, very strong position for a state to take. So,
can you tell us some of the states that you guys have worked with or are currently working with? Because I see on Legal Sports Report every day who's trying to legalize and who's not. So I'm just curious, like what you guys do and how early you're in that process.
Yeah, it's early, and like it similar to the commercial side, like it takes one to reset the entire market, and we're pretty close with one particular state. I don't want to get into that too much, but like
you live in the state of Maryland. I don't know.
Yeah,
they still haven't
Uh,
legalized it yet, or they have, but they don't know what the hell they're doing. So I don't know. I'm just
it,
throwing that out there. It's just a random note on my side. Sorry.
it's an interesting note to
Very.
for whoever wants to take it. But look, aside from that, teams kind of fall into that same category, and like we're very similarly. It's early, but like as those sports books show up into the jumbotron and like
Hmm.
physical locations in the stadiums and stuff like that, it's how do you continue to engage that consumer, and that is like giving them a place to feel comfortable and build confidence, because confidence breeds engagement. It always does. And so, but so does the illusion of confidence,
Hmm.
which is where that snake
Yep.
oil becomes really detrimental. And so for us, that's how we start to think about partnerships with those types of teams, and to a lesser extent so far leagues. But uh, leagues are interesting because there are a lot of sports that have an aging demographic and are trying to attract that younger fan, and the quickest way and the most efficient way to do that is jumping headfirst into sports betting. In order to do that, like, you need to be very, very comfortable as a league with who you are promoting, because operators and content platforms are now
Hmm.
tied at the hip. And so um, for us, we present that like solution for them with respect to like, okay, here is, you have XYZ partner for your league. They're tied to ABC media property. We only cover A and B. So we either need to figure out C, or you guys need to say, here's the fence.
Hmm.
And so that's kind of how we work with teams, leagues, states, things like that. But
What about?
again, it's like really, it's early.
Yeah, and hey, I mean it's early in this whole game, right? 2018 was only 4 years ago, is when PASPA was repealed, about a month ago, right? What, May 17th or whatever. So like we're pretty early into this industry,
Yeah.
and it really didn't like pop off until like the pandemic, right? Like yeah, we heard about it. I've been in New Jersey. I was never interested in it, and the pandemic came, and I missed sports, and then Bundesliga, German soccer came back, and I was like, well, I can't leave my house. Like, fuck it, I'll throw $5 on it. Let's see what
Yeah.
happens.
What?
Like, I don't know. And
Yeah.
it's now I work in the industry, and I have for 2 years. So it's just funny, kind of how it worked out. Last question, operators. Is there a way for you guys to rank these operators, or not? Maybe not. I guess rank. That's the word you guys are using. The operators, because I think like there are some that, and like again, I don't know how you guys would do this, but like there are some that are a little, I don't know, weirder than others. I guess we could say there's some that push a little bit of more predatory behavior than others. Like I'm kind of curious, like what you guys do on that end, or if that's kind of future plans.
It could be on our roadmap. It definitely could be. Our focus is really on monopolizing media property and public exposure on for platforms and individuals of those platforms or otherwise.
Mm-hmm. All right, makes sense.
And continuing through that. Now, you can like the next derivative of that is one of two routes, and I think the one you just mentioned is one of those. The other is getting into like draft experts and like those types of things, because there are a lot of people out there who I
Dude,
personally love.
everybody's got a mock draft.
I love the draft.
Me too.
Right?
I love
I
it.
love it.
Well, yeah, your
It,
thesis. We talked about that. Yeah, of course.
it is. I think it is like one of the coolest events in all of sports. That, and hearing the gate and the bell at the Triple Crowns.
Hmm.
Those two events for me are like so great. But so I think as you think about where we go from here, I mean, I think it looks a little differently. Um, I think we're hyper focused on being that ratings agency in the market and continuing to plant flags and just be recognized and leveraged at every step of the way. We really see a world where if you are not using a valid SharpRank and you're putting picks out, you are viewed as outside of what is real information. And that's the goal we're driving at really, really hard.
And we appreciate you, man. Again, been in the industry a little longer than a couple people, and noticing that and how much of a necessity this is. I think it's awesome getting to learn more about it and kind of what you guys are doing. Just going back to the draft, I mean, so many people bet on the draft through these these anyway. I know I did. Like, I made a bunch of money on the draft this year, thankfully. So I think, like, it's close enough that, like, yeah. I mean, it's really just the NFL draft. No one cares about the rest of them, but, like, that opportunity there could be huge. I mean, I think operators, there's only a few of us now at this point. I feel like the ones that are still around, or the smaller ones, are going to get eaten up or leave because the marketing budgets just aren't quite that big. So there's a lot of different opportunities out there, man. It sounds like you guys have a couple cool avenues to go down in the near future.
Yeah, it's fun. So, like, as far as near future, like, the next version of our mobile app drops in a couple weeks, which we're really excited about. It's got some really cool new features. We basically, like, used our early 10,000 users to, like, really understand what they like and what they wanted, and we built that in for them and for everyone else. But you'll see a lot more reporting at the platform level as well. We put out our first quarterly report at the end of the first quarter and the second quarter, and that to me is like a really great snapshot of the industry. Like, you can see DNA of each of these teams or each of these content teams and content arms of whoever, and from there, like, there's ways and what we can do is work with those content arms to say, hey, every month we're going to give you a snapshot of your team and two direct competitors, and you can see, for HR budgeting purposes, for promotions, things like that, all that sort of stuff can be gleaned from that. But more so, you can see what it would mean for you to add a player or another content producer from somebody else's team to yours, and what kind of value that would drive. So there's a lot of things that we do that you see the tip of the iceberg of, like, the mobile app, and you see our ratings out in the public, but underneath the water, there's a lot of stuff happening here.
Hell yeah, man. Well, congratulations, kudos on that. I think it's a great concept, and it's in motion, which is the important part, right? You're actually executing upon it, which I think is, again, as I said, very important in an industry like this. So this is awesome, man. Chris Adams, founder, CEO of SharpRank. SharpRank, download the app. What's the website? Where can we go check it out?
SharpRank.com.
Nice and easy.
Easy enough, and then we're pretty much on every social media. You come find us, follow along, and then the only other thing I always say is, like, please reach out. Like, I can't tell you how many times I've, like, physically picked up the phone and called somebody who reached out to us, because we want to know, like, is this valuable? Do you like it? What don't you like? All that sort of stuff is, like, we can only check our blind spots so much, and without input from you guys and everyone else, like, we're building what we believe based on the research we have. But if we have other opinions, we'll take them into consideration. So please, do not be shy. It'll be probably me calling you. So info@sharprank.com, and trust me, you will get a response.
I will make sure to throw that in the show notes. I won't put your phone number in there. We'll keep you that. You can keep that one. I'll put the info at sharprank.com in there. Chris, this has been awesome, man. Sincerely appreciate you coming on, explaining what you guys are doing, how you're helping the world. I think it's awesome. The entrepreneurial journey, the finance background, everything you got it's awesome. That's why I do this show, man. That's exactly why I do this show, getting to talk to people like you. So I do appreciate it.
I'm jealous of you, man. Thank you for having me. This is a great thing you do. I'm a big fan of this, and I think you do a great job with it, man. I really do. And, like, the seat you just real quick, like, the seat you sit in is so cool, because you said it, like this industry is so new that the smartest people from every industry are flooding
Yep.
into it, and you get to chat with them, which is like so. That's one of the things I love most about what I get to do on a daily basis. Is I get to talk to like the smartest nuclear physicist who has an algorithm that can beat
Yep.
halftime spreads, and like or whatever, and like I think it's so fascinating to watch this industry grow. So thank you for what you do, and yeah, I mean, we're big fans.
Pleasure is all mine, buddy. I appreciate it. Time is the only thing we don't get more of, so I appreciate you and everyone listening giving me a little bit of yours. But other than that, I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of your day. Thanks, everybody.
See you.